Cari speranthropos, welcome everybody to O Economica, all about economics and finance. Very happy to be with you all today, and I promise this will not be a long format video. Only a quick update, and thanks to all subscribers. You are very welcome. If you're new around here, please subscribe. This channel is O Economica, all about economics and finance, and my mission is to provide you all with the most interesting content about macroeconomic research, the stock market, financial assets, and everything in between. So I'm doing this video for a very special reason, because I was a bit puzzled by what I'm seeing. So I went back, I'm continuing my research on the UK budget, the fiscal position, and I'm doing a lot of very complicated econometric models, etc., etc. And so I was puzzled by the fact that I took the same data from the ONS, the same, as you can see here, public sector finances borrowing by subsector Appendix R, and the same data that I downloaded today and in October, they are they do not align. So, my first impression is they said that the ONS is fudging the numbers. I have no idea, but anyway, I presume that they do adjustments, they do revisions and things like that. But I just found out that the same data that I downloaded in two different periods of time. This one here is from today, and this one here is from October probably. There are different results. Okay, we will do it together now. What is that? April. Yeah, okay, sorry about that. So, okay. So, yes, I was basically double checking again total this phenomatic black hole theory. The new government was not left with a balanced budget, that's sure, and I will show you the numbers from the ONS, although they don't really match from one period to another. But anyway, what I was noticing here is that, for example, if I do the sum here of the 4 quarters in 2022, sum okay. Sum these 4 things, I have this data. Let's see if it's the same on the other spreadsheet. Let's see. Here we have, okay, it's 1,005,299,000,000. But here, that data, it's 1,083,408,000,000. On the new, and here, for the fiscal year 2023, that one, it's 1,010,83406. Here it's 1,083,408. So there is 2 million missing in the 2023 current receipts, because this column here, it's public sector excluding banks, total current receipts in million. So there is 2 million missing from one spreadsheet to another. It depends. If you download the spreadsheet in October or in September or in July, you may find something. If you download it a few months after, you may find some other numbers. This is really puzzling me, and it's a bit of a concern, to be honest with you all, because fudging numbers, it's not really a nice sport. I'm sure that the ONS, they have to do, from time to time, they have to review their measures and statistics. But now, for example, for this column here, it's the newest, the most recent data that they published on the 21st of November 2025 on the ONS website. You can see that the total current receipts for 2024, it's 1,120,139, yeah? While on the old, that's wild. On the previous version, the current receipts were 1,120,0589. Okay, so there are some 450 million difference between one version and another version. That's wild. That's totally wild. And now if we see here, the receipts up to September 2025 on this version, it's 904 billion, 904,519. On the previous version was 904,885. So there are actually 300 that's 300 and something, 366 million missing from one spreadsheet to another, which is the same thing. You see GQ, same column, same public sector borrowing by public sector finances borrowings by subsector appendix R, final table or something. So these data, they are supposed to be the final, the perfect edition. These are not, should not supposed to be, are not supposed to be revised, or this should not be changed by one month to another. I don't know why this has happened, honestly. I have no idea, because I don't work at the ONS. But I hope you can all see how from this 904,519, I took the data, because this data is the latest publishing of 21st November 2025. This other column here, it's from probably the 20th of October, probably some 1 or 2 months ago. And it's bewildering that the same data column, just to show you, public sector excluding public sector bank, total current receipts. Public sector, and it's also the same column, GQ, and on 2 different spreadsheets, which I downloaded in 2 different periods of the year, there are different numbers. There are millions moving around from appearing and disappearing. So I have to say it's disappointing for me, because is it true? It's true that I do free content on YouTube, but the ONS, it's wasting my time, because if they fudge the numbers, like if they fudge the spreadsheet like that, then for me they can basically stop wasting my time, honestly. You see here on the older version, at the end of 2024, it says that the current receipts in aggregate, the total current account of the UK government was 1,120,589 million. While instead here I have 450 million missing, because it's 1,120,139. On the other spreadsheet is 589. So here there are 400. The newest version, there are 450 million missing in current receipts, and there are 2 million missing on 2023. 2022 is the same. So let's try to, I insert a row here just to show you that I'm not on my own changing anything. So we'll see 2020 and 2019. Let's do a bit of investigating the quality of the data, for which I'm I'm truly disappointed, because although it can be 2 million or 400 million, but to me it's a waste of time, of my time. So that's really wrong. I'm sure that this doesn't happen only with the ONS, because, for example, in the United States we didn't have collection of data for quite a long time. So this one is the same. 825,966. So the revenues, the current receipts of the primary balance account, the current receipts of public sector, is the same for 2019. Here we have 2020, and you can see how it drops a lot, because of the lockdown. You have a smaller total current receipts of the public sector in aggregate. It's the current account of the government. You see how the current account takes less money in, because there was a lockdown, so the economy grinds to a halt. 2021 goes back to normal, and it grows above 2019 by 39 billion, or 38 billion and change. yeah, somewhere around that amount. So let's see on the newest version if there are changes. So here we have the same number, 785,723. Okay, it's the same. So 2020, it's the same. 2021 is the same. So and 2022, it's the same. Okay, so this government has been coming in and they are fudging the numbers. I don't like this stuff. Honestly, I really don't like it. I don't like it. And it makes the thing, okay. So what it means is that for 2024, they had less current receipts. And also for 2025, according to this one, which is the newest version that they released on the 25th of November, they have less receipts. Okay, now I want to see the expenditure. Okay, here you see GZ is the public sector, excluding public sector banks, total current expenditure. So to have a precise idea of how any government manages the public finances, you want to see in the pure public finances of receiving tax and spending only tax without borrowing, without additional borrowing. So the as I said again, the current account of the government, the easiest thing to do is to see current account receipts and current account expenditure. It's you just check the current account, how much money you get in from your income. Government income is mostly all tax, and how much the government spends, and what is the difference. When, let's say that in the case of the current receipts and current expenditure, we could say that the government does an overdraft. But of course, the overdraft that does the government, it's covered by borrowing, by issuing public debt. So that's the mechanism to make a parallel comparison between a normal customer who has a current account in a bank or a checking account. So when you spend more than what you have in your checking account, the bank can allow you an overdraft if it's prearranged. Okay, so the same is for the government. Okay, GZ. So I will move it here. Public sector. It's important that because I'm not on the same thing here. Let me delete these rows. I don't need it. Okay, so now we go down to the same format that we have here. Am I? Okay, bear with me. Okay, let's have another row here. Okay, GZ. Now we start to sum the expenditure. I start to sum the expenditure. Let's start from 2018 and F. Then, Excel should fill it up automatically. It should remember what I'm asking him to do. No, it doesn't. Well, nevertheless, it takes a minute. So I presume, or I fear, that also the expenditures figures have changed. And to be honest with you all, I went back to double check this data, this spreadsheet, because I published a video which was watched by a lot of people about this mythological narrative of the black hole. And so I showed how the new government, on a current account basis, they didn't find any 20 billion shortfall, because the primary account or the current account of the government, it must be always in good order. They only found a shortfall of 900 something million, which with the new figures becomes a billion. Okay, so let's see. Okay, I can already see GZ here. I can already see that the expenditures, they are less. So these are the older version of the current expenditures. So for this year, we have less expenditure, and okay, so the older version accounted for 902,806.06. These are billions, because you can see here it says there's the pound sign and million. So the data that you got there, you have to add 6 zeros thereafter. So these are billions. So the older version has this number, 902,806, which are billion. Now, if I do the difference with the new number, 901,903, okay, there is magically there is a 903 million, oh dear, which has disappeared. So the government is magically spending less. So the spending figures for 2024 seem to be the same, 112,769.5. Okay, 1097197. These are similar. 935,772, 779, 826, 755,314. Okay, so these are equal, and I'm glad that I did it while recording the video, so that you can all be sure that I'm not myself changing the numbers, but I just found out that from one version to another of the thing, that there is 903 million missing in expenditures, and that makes let's see on the revenue side. Let's see if the revenues have grown. That means that the government is no, the revenues are less here, because okay, so the older version accounts for more revenues because it's 904,885 here, and the new data, they have 904,519. So there are some 300 million missing here. And on the revenue side, they have less revenues here in the new version, and they have less revenue here. That's bewildering, and I hope this stuff does happen too often, because it's truly a waste of my precious time. So in terms of the so-called black hole, we can do a very quick okay, let's take one example. Okay, this ought to be only an example, and then I will take the other one and we will see what is the difference. I may also take a whiteboard if I can. Let's see if I can have a whiteboard. Let's see it. Okay, so here on this column here, we have current receipts, total current receipts, and total current expenditures. So we want to subtract receipts minus expenditure, and we want to see what is the overdraft in the government current account. Now, if we do it for 2023, we have 10,834.06. I'm dialing in the numbers, minus the expenditure, which are 1097197. And we see that 2023, the conservative government, it had a wild current account overdraft of 13,790 million, which is wild. This is reckless. Okay, just the current account. Honestly, it's reckless. I'm not saying let's say that I'm thankful of the matter of fact that I can have the data and work with the data and learn by doing. And I'm sure that if I go and take the data of the United States Treasury or Australia, Japan, the Eurozone, Brazil, whichever country, most of the public finances, they are not different from what happens with the UK government. So, but by a textbook, not only by a textbook definition, but by a simple pragmatic measure, if you have a current account and you ask for an overdraft, let's say of £13,000, almost £14,000, that's the bank may say, okay, I can give you an overdraft of 500 quid for a month, for a couple of months, of a grand, of £1,000, but you cannot ask me for 13,790 million overdraft. So what that means is that if in 2023, the conservative government, they had a big hole in the current account. And that's scary, because they had to borrow only to plug this one. Just the income. The income shortfall in aggregate of the country was 13 billion, almost 14 billion. And so to top up the income, the current account, they had to borrow without doing any investment. So that's why it's quite scary. I hope I can explain myself reasonably and it's intelligible what I'm saying. It's the same as you have income and you cannot afford your bills, and then you have to borrow to pay your bills or to, I don't know, to see the doctor and stuff like that. It's that bad, yeah. I don't know if it's bad enough, but for me it's worse. It's more than enough. It's bad enough. It's even worse. Okay, to my own measure of thing. So for 2024, the new government has 1,120,139 in total current receipts. So the UK, the Exchequer, the income in the current account of the of HM Treasury was 1,120,139,000,000. Now we subtract with the expenditures, and we have 1,127,695, and it's minus 7.5 billion. Okay, so the new government has managed to narrow the current account imbalance, because these are technically defined as funding shortfall. It's the funding of the current expenditure for which you are funding public services, you are funding transports, you are funding the healthcare system, you are funding welfare state. So the funding shortfall in the current account is the most scary thing that you can see, because it means that the income that you have is not enough just for the day-to-day managing of the business. That's why these other people, the new government, they say, okay, we want to achieve the fact that we have, for what we take into our current account, we don't want to go into overdraft, so we want to narrow the funding gap that there is in the current receipts compared to current expenditure. So 2024 fiscal year, it narrows from 13 to I can do, if I take the minus 7.5 billion is the funding gap that the government has created, or the government had to fund with borrowing for 2024. Now we remember that in 2023 the Conservative government had a funding gap of 13,790,000,000. Okay, so net the new government, they have managed to add to the current account 6.2 billion. Okay, if this should be easy to understand. Okay, the funding gap has shrunk, has improved from 13 billion and 700 million to 7.5 billion. Okay, now for 2025 we have current receipts 904,519 minus 901,903. So okay. So by September 2025, the government, it's running a surplus of 2.6 billion. Okay, so this lot is technically doing marginally better than the previous lot, because they have only for the current account, until September they have a 2.6 billion surplus. It means that the income was 904,519,000,000, and they spent 901 billion. So the income is 904 billion, they are spending 901 billion, so there is a surplus of 2.6 billion. Okay, so by this measure, this is good. It's way better than the previous lot, I have to say. Now let's see. Let's take the other people here. And I know that they are already, okay, I have to do something. Okay, so this one and this calculator that we have here, these are the new version, the 21st of November ONS update with the public sector finance borrowing and current receipts and expenditure. Now I will open up the older version that I have, which was I downloaded in October. Now I don't remember exactly, and I want to double check what are the discrepancies or the inconsistency or the incongruence between the two data tables. And in my latest content, I already exposed what for me are the very notable inconsistencies in the some tables that are in the official document of the budget, which are from the OBR. I think the OBR, I don't really like what they put out, because it's to me it's not credible at all. From a simply from an economical theory standpoint, I want to diverge so that I want to quickly, because the OBR is projecting that unemployment will decrease from, first of all, they have an old data for unemployment, because unemployment is 5%, it's not 4.8. So when they do the projection, they will project the wrong data. But the OBR, it's convinced, is projecting that unemployment in the UK, from where it is now, it will improve dramatically and it will go down to 4.1%. But at the same time, they say, okay, inflation will stay at 2%, which in the basic, when you do macroeconomics 101, okay, you know that when you have low unemployment, inflation, for sure, it will be more than 2%. Okay, because you have more people which are employed, which are in work. In aggregate, there is more disposable income. The country is growing, the economy is growing, and then because there is more demand, there is more people with the money, there is more spending, and so you expect for prices to go up. So to have a push in inflation. Okay, so it's honestly it's bonkers. It's technically wrong. It's an absurdity of really the first thing that you learn in macroeconomics. Yeah. Okay, you see here. That's the wrong data. It's the past quarter, because inflation, it's unemployment is 5% now, and I said that for some measure it's 5.2. Okay, so they project 4.9, but if in the software I put the wrong data, then the projection is not calibrated. Okay. Well, anyway, you see that they presume that in unemployment rate here will steadily decrease to this level, 4.1%, which is a humongous jump. A humongous improvement in the rate of unemployment. So it means that you will have a million more people in work or something like that, 1.2 million jobs. If we see here, let's see here, employment in millions. So in 2025, there are 34.2 million people in work. By the end of the decade, they expect 35.4. So it's 1.2 million more people in work. And so they see in their fantasy economics, because this OBR table, it's fantasy economics, unemployment will shrink from 4.8 to 4.1. But these two data, improving employment and unemployment shrinks, it's totally contradictory with this one, because you cannot have inflation at 2. Okay, you see that they want, by the end of the decade, they want 1.2 million people more in employment, right? So what that means, that there is 1.2 million people more which are consumers. You have 1 million more consumers into the economy. What do you expect to happen to the consumer price index if you have 1 million more incomes in aggregate? Inflation, it cannot stay at 2%. It's inconsistent. Okay, if I were, by any misfortune of the OBR, if I had to grade this, I would give them an F and say, mate, do your homework, come back and present something that it's acceptable. Yeah, I want to be that arrogant. Okay, because these are things that I will not even in the worst nightmare do by any stretch of any imagination. Okay, so if I had to decide, or if my idea is that the OBR, not it has to be scrapped. I think that the Institute for Fiscal Study, they can do a better job in providing the data for the official documents. Okay, because these official documents, regardless of what are it's read by anybody globally. Okay, by investment banks, by BlackRock, by the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund. And when you present this kind of table, what is your credibility? So honestly, I would fire the OBR. Would say, listen, mate, no more, and we will take another company who can do a better job for us. Because I don't understand. Not I don't understand. I understand what they have done, and I know why there is a total inconsistency in these numbers. And anybody can understand. If there are 1 million more people in work, so you have 1 million more people which are consuming, how do you expect to have CPI 2? Come on, go on. Wait. Okay, so now let's confront the older version. Okay, so let's see let's take the 2025 data. So in the older version, they have 904,885, but in the newer version, there is a 300 million less in current receipts. So these are the current receipts. Let's go back. Very easy. GQ is public sector total current receipts. GZ is total current expenditure, right? In million or pounds. Okay, so let's go down and do this silly and boring exercise to compare the spreadsheet tables. Okay, so 904 and 800 million were the old current receipts, and the 902,806. Okay, so the government is fudging 600 million more in current receipts for now. And let's see how was the past year. 1120589 minus 1127695. This should be 7 billion. Okay, and let's see 2023 here. Okay, we're gonna do this. So we're gonna do 1083408 minus 1097197, 13,700,000,000. Okay, so there are a few hundred millions moving around, but the largest incongruence, it's 2025. Okay, it's a bit difficult to compare it. Okay, so here we have the new version. So they have 900,519 in current receipts, and okay, let's highlight that, and minus 901,903 in expenditure. So the current account, it's up 2.6 billion. If we do the same, which is the same data, same identical data table, but with the older version, you see, okay, here, okay, well, doesn't matter, well, it's the same thing. So we have 904,885. So the new version is 2.6 billion. The older version, it's 904,885 minus, oh dear, minus 902,806, and these are 2,000,000,2079. And you see here how the expenditure in the new version, it's 901,903. The older version was 902,806. So there is a 903 million difference in the expenditure, and there are 300 million less in the current receipts. You can see here. So here, the older version and the new version here, this one, there are 903 million less in current expenditure, which have been accounted for. But at the same time, there is a shortfall, or not a shortfall, there are 300 million less in current receipts from one version to another. Let's put it more or less at the same level here. You see here? 904,885 was the older version. The November data, it's 904,519. So there is a 300 million less in current receipts and 900 million less in current expenditure. According to the new figures, the total current receipts are up 2.6 billion. Let's see for 2024. Okay, now we take here the older version. In 2024, there was 120,589 in receipts. We subtract, let me move the calculator, we subtract with the total current expenditure minus 1127695. This is stamped in my memory. So minus 7.1 billion. Okay, now let's do the same for the new version. Okay, so okay, these are current receipts. Okay, so current receipts here, let me move it so we can compare. There, come on, I don't need that. What happened? What has happened? Oh dear, oh dear. Let's go back to what I need to see. Okay, so here 2024, we are comparing these two things here, and you can see already GQ here, our current receipts, they differ from one month to another. Okay, so the new version, so in the old version, the current account deficit was minus 7 billion. Now in the latest version, we have 1120139 of current receipts for 2024. In the older version was 589, so there are 430 million less. Okay, these are current receipts here. We want current expenditure, which is the same, minus 1127695. It's exactly the same number. Okay, so in the new version, the shortfall was minus 7.5 billion. Okay, so there are things moving around. All it changes is that there are 400 million less. So the 2024 primary account deficit was minus, the funding gap, not the primary account. The funding gap was minus 7.5 billion. Okay, so yes, I've showed you now how I've been puzzled by this thing. I said, why I got the same data from the same website, and now I find different numbers. So I reconciled myself that more or less there are a few hundred millions moving around. So what is the current situation? So in 2023, need the pen. Okay, in 20, can you write it? Okay, it's probably struggling because there are too many things going at the same time. So in 2023 fiscal year FY, the funding gap of the conservative government was minus 13,791,000,000. Okay, in 2024 the funding gap fiscal year was this one, minus 7.556. Okay, in 2025 we will do it again, but the fiscal year up to September of this year we have a surplus of 2.661. Okay, now I'll do this with you all here so that we can see again. So okay, so we are checking here. Okay, July to September 2025, these are the latest data that the government has. So receipts are 904,519. We subtract 904,419. Let me double check. Yeah, subtract 901,903. These are all in millions. Okay, 2.616. Okay, I made a mistake. 2.616. So I did it by memory and I inverted the position of these two. Okay, so it is actually the case that for the current account, so that this new government, it's doing a decent thing. They have balanced the funding gap, the current account, and up to September they were running a 2.6 billion surplus. So they have adjusted public finances. Okay, I don't have a British passport. I don't vote in national election in the UK, and just a while ago I explained how I despise the tables that are in the official document, because those are inconsistent for me, and I would never like it from anywhere it would be made in that kind of fashion. So, but the numbers don't lie. We cannot spin things for what they are not. And I stay with the arithmetic and the numbers. And for 2025, Rachel Reeves has has narrowed the funding gap, and she has managed to generate a surplus, at least up to September. Now we will see how these numbers, how they will change, because when we go and see that instead of evaluating the current account of the government, we evaluate the total movement of, because these are expenditure, so it's the overdraft. When we see what it's the final figure, the final amount for the total borrowing, you will see that the deficits are way larger. Okay. Okay, let me take away this thing. Okay. Okay, let's use government data. Okay, here, for example, we can see here total expenditure, total current expenditure, total expenditure, net investment, central government cash requirements. That's this column here. Okay, I think no, I only want to see the net borrowing figures. That's it. Value added. Okay, yes, net lending borrowing fee. Okay. So now this table here shows us the total movement of cash, which is not only the current account, but the total revenues. So other source of revenues, which can be imports, exports, and other external, like capital inflows, which come from outside the UK, and also what the UK pays abroad. Okay, which can be also wages that are which are earned by UK citizens, I don't know, in Australia or in the United States, and these basically account for some sort of capital UK income which is earned abroad. So as a net investment flows, they can be accounted as a revenue, total revenue. Okay, so the current account only measures tax receipts and tax expenditures. Okay, so this new lot said, okay, we want to balance the day-to-day spending, and they achieved it. Okay, so they narrowed the gap in 2024, and up to September they were running a surplus of 2.6 billion. Although the numbers on the spreadsheet change from one month to another, but that's not, I cannot do anything about that. It's the ONS. Now, that's the current account. Okay, now we see the total, which includes also the borrowing for investment. And you see here there is gross capital formation, so there is investment, foreign direct investment that goes into the UK investment abroad, then there is imports of goods, exports of goods, tax on goods that are imported or exported. Okay, so it's the broader picture. Okay, and so AT here, AT is the net lending or borrowing. If there is a plus, the government it's lending. If there is a minus, the government it's borrowing. Okay, it's deficit. And you can see that most of the time there is always a minus, because the government does investment, they purchase goods from abroad, so there is the balance of trade, balance of payment for imports and exports, the investment that the government has to do for improving anything, or they want to build a power plant, they want to build, I don't know, solar farms, solar panels, they want to build and install wind turbines, they want to build a drilling oil platform in the North Sea. They may participate with the private sector in the investment of the infrastructure. They want to do HS2, so they borrow to invest for capital projects. And these are infrastructures, hospitals, roads, bridges, etc., etc., etc. So what we can do here, I insert a row here. So we start to separate the most recent fiscal years. And with this data, from the government, at least from the ONS, we can see how the figures, the amount change, and basically these are all the excess borrowing amounts that build up the stock of public debt. So these are the flow of money, of borrowing, and which then becomes the stock of public debt. So the total amount is 2.9 trillion something. Okay, so here we have, okay, let's do also 2019, insert row below. Okay, we start to sum here. Okay, so I want to sum 4 quarters, not all the column here. Oh, come on, Excel. Sum is 4 quarters of 2019. Sum this 2020. Sum 2021. 2022. 23. 24. Alright. And partially 2025. Alright. What are you up to, Mike? I don't know. Wasting time on Excel. Alright. Okay. What do we have here? Okay, so to make sure that I haven't made any mistake, okay, so here I summed here 34 to 37, so it's 4 quarters of 2019. Okay, let's double check. If I click on this here, 134, 8137, so it's four data cells, okay, so it's 4 quarters. So in 2019, the total deficits in amount was minus 53,627,000,000, right? Okay, in 2020 was minus 274,362,000,000. In 2021, 175 billion. In 2022, 118 billion. In 2023, 166 billion. In 2024, 169 billion. And now, by the first half of 2025, 77 billion. So you can, I hope you can understand how these figures change from current account sums, which are which is the current account of the government, and what are the additional net lending or borrowing that that any government does. Okay, so if the next two columns are total expenditures, total revenues, okay, and every row it's a quarter, and it goes from 1987 to the latest to the first 6 months of 2025. Okay, there can be that there is a new version of this data. I don't think so, because I took the newest available just recently. So you can see here how these are the total net amount of lending or borrowing. And at the end of 2024, this new government, it was borrowing 3 billion more than the previous year. Okay, so I only see the numbers. Okay, I'm not in favor of this or the other, because here it's 2023. At December, by the end of December 2023, the total amount mobilized by the net borrowing was minus 166.380. Okay, here by the end of 2024, it's minus 169,744. So we can do easy arithmetic, and the new government it borrowed 3 billion more or less. 169,744 minus 166,380, 3.3 billion and 64 million. Okay, and by the first 6 months of 2025, they mobilized 77 billion and 800 million. This according to official ONS data, which I cannot change by any stretch of any imagination. So what do we have? We have that the current account was balanced. It has been balanced, at least up to recently. But the borrowing figure, you can see here how the whole ball game changed. Not ball, yeah, call it ball game in football. How the whole thing varies, because the fiscal year 2024, the current account, only the overdraft was minus 7.5 billion. But when you go and see the whole amount was minus 169 billion. Okay, it's here, it's that one, right? The same is for 2023. The current account overdraft was minus 13.790 billion, but the total net lending or borrowing, so the total net borrowing was minus 166. So minus 166,380. So the borrowing requirements theoretically would be 166,380 minus, no, the borrowing requirements, the total was 166,380, okay? 13.7 billion was the funding gap, so the net figure between the two is 13,791, 152,589, okay? So the government borrowed 13.7 billion only to close the funding gap in the fiscal year 2023, and they borrowed on top of that 152,589 million. Okay, in 2024, the government borrowed in total 169 billion here. Sorry about that, 744 million. The funding gap in the current account, so the overdraft was 7.5 billion. So what happened was that the government, let me cancel this, let me erase this one. The new government borrowed 7.5 billion to balance the books, okay, to pay the overdraft. And they borrowed an additional 62 billion 188 million. That's it. That is the total amount that they borrowed for investment. I don't know, whatever is the investment. The NHS, workers, you can do all the speculation, all the spinning. I'm not interested in that. I'm just seeing doing simple accounting, simple arithmetic. But for this fiscal year, they managed to achieve in the current account 2.6 billion surplus. And the borrowing up to now, it's 77.8 billion. Okay, so this has been useful for me to double check the government data, and I know this must have been a really boring, really boring video. But if you can just thumbs up, leave a like, and type in a comment. If you have any suggestion that if there's anything else that you want to know about the UK economy, I may be able to provide you with the most up-to-date data, except the fact that the ONS may change the data from a month to another, but I cannot do anything about that. So, yeah, it's important to clarify these things because I can say for sure that there is a lot of disinformation, misinformation in the mass media, in the official mainstream media, and the ordinary citizens, they are not aware, they are not well informed according to what are the real numbers, the data that the government provides, okay? Because if you are running an off-licensed shop, if you are running your own business, if you are a plumber, a restaurant, I'm sure you are so busy with the stuff, the bills, and all those things that you cannot be bothered to go on the ONS data and do the accounting for the government. So I can do this for you, and I can assure you that at least for the current account in 2025, there was up to September 2.6 billion, let's say, in the bank account. But on the other side, the total net lending and borrowing, the government needed an additional 77 billion. And in the previous year, they borrowed in total 169 billion. And we saw here that the current account was minus 7.5 billion in overdraft. So they had a funding gap in the day-to-day expenditures between tax and expenditure. And they borrowed an additional 162 billion. The previous lot, which has been in power for 14 years and all the blah, 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 For 2023, they had a current account overdraft of minus 13,790,000,000. Okay, so their managing only by arithmetic was a bit less prudent or less sound than this new lot, which I'm not saying that they are doing miracles, no, because the debt to GDP ratio will contrary to what the OBR forecast, etc., etc., I'm pretty sure that will go through the threshold of 100% debt to GDP. That's for sure. There is no way it's not going to happen. It's simply by design of the economic system we live in. The government, it has to issue debt to print money and to pay for public services and to create GDP. So if you want to know how much grows GDP in a country, you have to see money supply. You want to see money supply. So you want to see two things. M4, if it grows or doesn't. M4 is the aggregate from the BOE. So the money supply that comes out from the Bank of England. And it's the aggregate of everything, public and private sector, but mostly private sector. Then you want to see if the government does in a fiscal year does a surplus or deficit. If the government does a deficit, which is a minus, what that means is that the government, or the surplus is a plus. If it's a minus, like here in that column here, minus 274, minus 175, minus 118, 16, 169, 77, okay. So if the government does a deficit, it means that it prints out more money than it takes with taxes, and that excess cash goes into the economy. So that's how GDP is created. Money supply, which comes in two different forms. M4 goes up or down, so there is credit creation, and the Bank of England measures the credit creation into the economy. And then the government does surplus or deficit. If it does a surplus, the government, it means that it takes money away from the economy. If it does a deficit, it means that the government puts money into the pocket of ordinary people. It can be done with tax reliefs, with welfare state, with investments, with paying higher wages, so forth and so on. Okay, so when any ordinary person who is watching my channel, you must have this basic concept clear in your mind, although it's all scribbled around here. If you want to know GDP, just very easily, just go and see what is the money supply, and you will have a rough thumb idea of how much is gonna grow an economy. That's in very broad and simple terms. So now I can provide you all with more data, and we're gonna have a broader picture of the exchequer. In what sense? We're going to see starting in 1989 Q1 down to fast forward to Q3 2025, so to September 2025, how any government has managed public expenditures. In what sense? We're going to see here the balance of payment measured in percentages terms with the gross domestic product, the balance of payment measured in proportion to the primary income, to the secondary income, the balance of payments for trading goods and services. Then we will see the fiscal balance. Then we will know if there was a twin deficit, yes or no, if it's true or false. And we will see for every year, current account balance, primary income, secondary income, what was the net debt to GDP ratio. Okay, so why, for example, Thatcher years were so marvelous? Okay. What Lady Thatcher did and Nigel Lawson did was something which I do not know exactly because I was a little child. But reading the history of the economic policy, what basically they decided to do, I will take a new I will try to do a new dashboard. So while I do that, what they decided to do, and people in Britain, I hope somebody will will tell me better than what do I know myself. They decided to shrink all manufacturing jobs, all industrial jobs, and they expanded the financial services sector. Okay, so Thatcher years, they were a booming economy for the City of London. Okay, now I don't want to sound partisan, but I think the lived life of people, their lived experience, they recount of the fact that mining pits were closed in Wales or in other parts of England, and the industrial base was shrunk, the manufacturing base was shrunk, and so people, they were made unemployed. So Thatcher decided to privatize the economy and to give a huge boost to the City of London. But the secret sauce of Margaret Thatcher was technology. That's why she well knew or saw that mining or industry, heavy industry, they were highly labor intensive and highly capital intensive, while instead she knew, because probably she had some hints from Reagan or from other people who had expertise, that technology was going to the city. In which form? They had computers, the beginning of electronic trading, and basically the euro-dollar market. Euro-dollar market. So what happened? That the City of London became a huge global financial hub. It expanded. It always was a huge financial hub, but the City of London was mostly an insurance. Still today, it's a huge insurance. It has a huge insurance business with Lloyd's and all those huge insurance businesses who cover underwrites policies for shipping industry, for climate change, and all that kind of stuff. To be honest, the City of London, they had this. They did also shipping. It doesn't matter. The City of London, the insurance business, it's so old that it goes back to the 19th century. So when there was the empire in India, and you had the Society of the East, the Company of the East Indies, and so you had all these merchant ships which were bringing, I don't know, saffron or cotton or all sorts of materials from India to London or to Manchester. They had a very funny way to do business, because for traveling by ship, by merchant ship, which was made of wood, these huge galleons or merchant ships, it would take days and months. If they had some special clauses in their shipping insurance policy, if the cargo of saffron or cotton or rice, all sorts of material that was transported by the Company of the East Indies from Asia to London, to the Docklands, like tobacco and all that kind of stuff, to the Docklands, and if the cargo arrived later, they would not even pay the cargo. They had some sort of basically method of using the insurance policy. So if the cargo was late by certain measure, they would not satisfy the whole value of the cargo because it arrived late. And probably because the goods were perishable, they would have some clauses for not to pay the whole thing. So that's it's reported in history books. But anyway, what Thatcher did, and that's why the insurance industry in the City of London, it's centuries old. So what Thatcher did, she used technology, and modern old economic theory explain with the production function, with the Cobb-Douglas production function, that you have a labor component, a capital component in the production function, and you have a technology component. So what Thatcher did, she made unemployed all the people who were working in the heavy industries, and she used the city of London with technology, electronic trading, euro-dollar market, and so the services industry had inflows of capital, which anybody can understand that the city of London attracted billions of pounds, while instead if you are a clay pottery manufacturer, you can sell, I don't know, Chinese pottery, but you will not earn billions. So she made a couple of arithmetic accounting, and she said, okay, if I earn 100 million with the heavy industry and I can earn 100 billion with the city, I will bet everything on the city of London and this new technology, and we will go for that. But that kind of stuff was really, compared to our debt to GDP ratio, it was abominous, because you can see here, not in a bad sense, in 1989 the debt to GDP ratio was 25.5%. This 0.26 is 25.5%. If I put it in percentages, yeah, okay, net debt to GDP ratio 1989, 25.5%. Let's see if it takes the... Okay, no, I don't want to cause any drama. Just one thing. Okay, so I don't have to select the whole column, so we will see the percentages. In the late 80s and the early 90s, the debt to GDP ratio of the UK was 25%, 23%, 21.7%. So today we are talking about 200% debt to GDP ratio, like it's fresh water. Okay, if you take the most progressive climate change ideologues, they would even borrow 1,000% to do the whole transformation of everything and stuff like that. Whatever are their ideological beliefs, which for me are it's an abhorrent method of reasoning, which I define totally irrational. Okay, it's total political ideologies. They are totally irrational, and its proof of concept is the fact that there is a so large scale of disinformation in the mass media that anybody is able to argue anything, like even that elephants are flying on the moon, or pigs are flying, I don't know, stuff like that. Like, for example, these are the fiscal figures for the current account, and by no imagination, 2025 down to September, the government was in a small surplus, but the net borrowing figure was minus 77 billion. Okay, the total net borrowing figure. In 2023, the past lot was doing worse. Okay, so if you are somebody who wants to reconcile yourself with the reality of things, even if you don't vote for those people, the hard data is this one. The matter of fact is that one. Okay, so I don't have any political party card in my pocket. I don't have a British passport. I don't vote in any sort of election. I have no interest in anything. And so you can see how Thatcher was 1991, 21.7% debt to GDP. Marvelous. Of course, the economy was gangbusters because there is no actual borrowing going on. You can borrow something and it doesn't matter, you know. And so what Thatcher did also, she was fiercely controlling money supply. She shrank money supply from 10 to 5 or 6%. And so mortgage rates were jacked up to 10, 12, 14%. And because private credit was shut by Thatcher, because she ordered the Bank of England to do so, or Nigel Lawson ordered the Bank of England not to do private credit creation, then all the industries, all the business people who were working in industries, mining companies and manufacturing, they had to shut the business. Okay, that's what Thatcher did. But was really needed? I don't know, because she was an inflation hawk. It was really needed. 20% debt to GDP? It was really needed? It was really necessary? I don't know. In my own according to the numbers, these are not debt to GDP ratio. They are so scary that you need to shut everything down. The problem was inflation. So she responded to what was the macroeconomic and fiscal policy framework of the time, because by that time the Bank of England was not independent. The Bank of England was linked to the Treasury, to the Exchequer, and we did not have all these new monetary policy tools, which is quantitative easing, the whole financialization of the economy with credit derivatives, all the stuff that we have now, which is highly toxic, like mortgage-backed securities, collateralized debt obligation, buy now, pay later, I don't know, all the auto leases, credit cards, all that kind of stuff did not exist on a mass consumer scale in the late 1980s and early 1990s. There was not this massive consumer credit bubble. There was a banking business for mortgages, and it was made unaffordable because mortgage rate, they were 10, 12, 14%. So money supply was very much restricted in the private sector. Today, you can walk in a bank and say, okay, I want $1 million. They probably write you a check and say, okay, take it, if you can pay back. Otherwise, it goes into the black hole. So, 1994, 33.6% debt to GDP. And so we can see here how from 1994, debt to GDP ratio began to grow again, like 10%, a little bit more than 10%. And then in the year 2000, you have 29, 28, but then since 2002, the debt to GDP ratio has been growing steadily. So it's not a coincidence that debt to GDP ratio began to compress going in 1998, 99, 2000, and 2001. Still for technology component, because in the late 90s, going into the new millennia, we had the internet bubble. So all this new technology frenzy, probably by some sort of magic trick, made public finances not more sustainable, but the return on investment was more productive. So what does technology is that technology, anybody knows that technology improves productivity. Productivity goes up. So we are able to do more using less. Okay, in very simple terms. You know, I can run, I'm able to run Excel and do macroeconomic modeling here, and I can use the cloud computing power. I can do a lot more things just on my own, and I don't need 3, 4, 5 people working with me. I can do just everything on my own. Okay, and I can record a video. I can do any sort of thing without incurring in major hiccups as now. So the late 1990s and the early 2000s also saw a technology factor in the Cobb-Douglas production function that improved the broader economic performance. So GDP grows faster than that, and by magic trick, you see that the net debt to GDP ratio was the highest in 1997 at 37.2%, and then it decreased when the new Labour government went in to the lowest level in 2001 of 28.7. Then it started to grow again because after the dot-com bubble there was an economic recession. And since then, the debt to GDP ratio, it's now in 2025 94.95%, 94.9%. But you can see how in 2023 was 95.8, 2024 94.9. Okay, and how that happens, because the government they changed the fiscal rule. So what they argue, and this trick is dangerous. Okay, what they say is that current account, so current expenditure must equal current receipts. Okay, if I made some grammar mistake, please forgive me. Then what they do is that they borrow to invest, so they build up assets. Okay, also they say that net borrowing to GDP is shrinking because they are building up assets. Okay, so what they do a financial sector trick, which is corporate finance. You mark up the value of your assets. Because the assets of the government are worth more, naturally, for the same level of the debt, what does that improves the net debt to GDP figure. Okay, so they do some corporate finance accounting. They mark up the value of government assets. Okay, they do this, which is good. They balance the primary source of stability. It's having a current account which does not do any overdrafts. Okay, and so they balance expenditure with receipts. Okay, I probably made a grammar mistake there. Forgive me. But then what they do to improve even more the overall debt to GDP ratio, they borrow to build assets. They put assets on the balance sheet, and they mark those. They give those assets a certain value, which is more than the borrowing that they have to ask in the bond market to finance the building of those assets. So net, okay, if the value of the asset is larger than the borrowing, okay, so I'm marking up my assets. What happens is that I have a net surplus, net positive. It's like when you buy a house, okay, you do a mortgage of £500,000, okay, but then what happens, okay, you have 500k. It's very easy. If the house price goes up, what that means is that you can mark up the value of your assets. So net, if you're borrowing 500k, but your house on a relative market valuation basis is worth 600k, you are net positive 100k. It's that easy, okay? So the government is doing, Rachel Reeves is doing the same thing. She's balancing the books. She say, okay, the current account, no more overdraft, but she's borrowing to invest, okay? Borrowing to invest. What they do is that they mark up the value of the asset. So because the government assets is worth more than the borrowing the government does, which are not nuts, but they are hundreds of billions of pounds, then that borrowing to invest becomes a net positive. And you see that the net positive is here, because magically the net debt to GDP ratio from 2023 to 2024, it has gone down by 0.9%. And if they keep doing this thing, it's okay. But this magic tree basically disappears when there is a crisis. Okay, when basically the king is naked and you cannot anymore mark up your asset, what happens is that the real value of the borrowing it's larger than the asset. So you are underwater. That's what happened in the housing market crisis. People had mortgages for 500k, but the house was worth 400k, and so they were underwater by 100,000 pounds. Yeah. So this trick, it works as long as there is no economic recession, there is no financial crisis. You can keep marking up your assets, and that's basically the Ponzi scheme of the whole financial system. So I'm not saying that the government is exactly doing this exact thing, but nevertheless they managed to improve the net debt to GDP ratio. But borrowing to invest presumes that the value of the assets that you have, it has to be greater than your borrowing. So in 2024 the thing already improved, but what other important things to know is that basically the debt to GDP ratio always grows when there is a twin deficit. So the twin deficit is a deficit of the current account. So when the current account is in overdraft, so also the primary income and the secondary income are in deficit. So you have a twin deficit. Or in this instance, in 2002, the primary income balance to GDP was positive, and it's always good to have that your primary income as a percentage of GDP is positive, because otherwise the government has to borrow more and more and more and more to cover the shortfall in the public finances. But the current account was minus 2% here, 2002, but we can see here the whole thing. the current account balance as a percentage of GDP, since I have here the data from the late 90s up to the latest data, you can see it's always minus, 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 minus. So any government, it can be Thatcher, it can be Reagan, it can be Blair, it can be Brown, it can be Ken Clark, it can be George Osborne, it can be Philip Hammond, it can be Theresa May, it can be Rachel Reeves, it can be Rishi Sunak, it can be anybody you want. The current account was always in deficit compared to the GDP. So this all basically mainstream media would not exist if not for the ideological purpose to have people from one side of the barricade insulting people from the other side of the barricade. Okay, just for the pleasure of insulting somebody and being so rude and discourteous and totally miseducated and be totally ignorant about not the numbers but the real facts of the economy of your own country, just for the pleasure of insulting somebody, then you say, oh, this is bad, the other one is good. No, but every year there was a current account deficit. That's how it was. And to me, it's just hot air. The primary income, even in the Thatcher years, was slightly negative. Then other governments, in other periods of time, they turned it positive. Like here, 1998, the primary income was positive, probably because there was more capital inflows in financial services because of the dot-com bubble. Okay, so there are benefits from having a very large base financial services industry, but it's not the panacea for all things, because if somebody is born in Aberdeen or in Edinburgh or in Middlesbrough or in Sutherland, in Portsmouth, in Swansea, wherever they are, they cannot walk into a bank or in an hedge fund and say, okay, can I be employed? No. I mean, it doesn't work like that. So you need a diversified economy. So you can see here how the primary income balance, it becomes negative as a percentage of GDP when there is 2007, 2008, 2009, when there is a financial crisis. So the government runs deficit all over the places because there is a financial crisis, because the assets in the economy in aggregate are basically worth way less than the aggregate borrowing that is in the system, and so everything grinds to a halt because everybody is in the yellow submarine underwater. And then 2010, there is a primary income, also 2011, primary income surplus, but then you can see that another example, 2011, 12, 13, 14, 15, okay? Debt to GDP ratio, it has been growing from 70% to 81%. And with any person you would ask to in the UK, they would say, oh yeah, the austerity, it was a disaster, it was a mayhem, etc., etc. But the poor man of George Osborne, he did deficit all over the places. He threw money everywhere in the economy. There is no surplus. They had no fiscal surplus. So there was no austerity. Okay, they use money to do other things rather than pay welfare or give free money to anybody. But there was no austerity in the numbers, in the data. There was no austerity. There is minus everywhere. Current account, minus. Primary income, minus. Secondary income, minus. Net debt to GDP from 2010 to 2015, it grows from 70% to 81.7%, 82.5%. So they added 10% in net debt compared to GDP. You call that austerity? I do not. That is deficit spending that they managed to do because there was quantitative easing and we have zero interest rate. And now, by the end of this decade, we will have to see what's going to happen to this ginormous financial asset bubble. And so there was no austerity. Real austerity, it came after Brexit. You can see 2016, you have current account minus 5.5%, primary income minus 2.3, minus 1.2, secondary income as a percentage of GDP. Debt to GDP was 82.5%. 2017, 2018, you have austerity. And who did austerity? It was May and Philip Hammond. Because Theresa May, she really ran a tight ship and she decreased a lot of public spending. Yeah. So in the data, you can see that the debt to GDP ratio, it decreased by 1.2%, 82.5 to 81.3. But then it comes in Boris Johnson, and fuck off the accountants, sorry about that, and they start to spend and splurge, because what it means basically is that they were trying to run a tight ship. There was all the debate about the common market, etc., etc., etc. But basically, when you are disaligned, when you are imposing all sorts of imports and export tariffs, then when the economy, the lack of economic activity in the private sector, it has to be substituted by the government. And in 2019 already you are growing more. The jump was humongous, from 81.3 to 84.2. So there are 2.9% more in debt to GDP. And then 2020, basically, there is a huge exogenous shock. But what basically, the consequences of Brexit are that there is a lot of tariffs and red tapes. So all the lost economic activity and import-export income and the funding that the European Union provides to the UK, it's missing. And so the government, it has to borrow more. So by definition, the debt to GDP ratio, of course, will grow way more than 100% of GDP. But to demonstrate you that I'm not partisan, here, there is no austerity. 2010 to 2015. 70%, 81.7%. So there is 10% more in debt to GDP. So they borrowed. They did not do any austerity. There is no austerity. For me, not for me, according to the data, there is no shrinking of public spending. So the aggregate data of the economy, of course, they are not the same, not the economy. Yes, the overall economy, they are not the same as balancing the current account of the government. But there is no period in time in the 90s, the late 90s, in the early 2000s, in the 2010, the past decade, etc., 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 that anyone has at the slightest idea to balance the books, because the government needs to borrow in order to generate money supply and to do its own thing, pay welfare, pay public services, the firefighters, the ambulance drivers, anything that you want. Now, we can see here, another column, fiscal balance as a percentage of GDP. Okay, so here we have the data of the fiscal balance before accounting for all the capital inflows and outflows with the trade, trading abroad with the financial services with the United States. So people in the UK are buying stocks in Wall Street, imports, exports, all that make the global economy what Britain made of the global economy, global trade. No goods, they are moving in and out, going to the Docklands, from the Docklands to Europe or to the Indies or to Norway or to the Americas. So it's Britain that gave the impulse to the global trade, the global commerce, merchants and stuff like that. So honestly, the idea of Brexit is totally bonkers. It's based on false things and false facts and on ideology. It's something that I despise like hell. Anyway, so 1999, the fiscal balance was positive. So, okay, do we have, no, I'll go back, I cannot have the percentages. Okay, yeah, okay, so here we have 0.72% surplus in the fiscal balance. The year 2000, we have 1.4% fiscal balance, positive number. There is no minus there. So we see that the technology component creates more fiscal revenues, okay, because GDP grows. Okay, 1998, the fiscal balance was almost flat. So what do you see here? It's the effect of having a positive or a negative fiscal balance, which makes true or false whenever the government or the economy in aggregate runs on a twin deficit. The twin deficit is the fiscal deficit and the balance of payments, the broader balance of payment deficits. The balance of payments is made of goods and services, okay? If you are importing more goods and services than you are exporting, and there is also the financial account. So if you are investing if you receive more investments than you do abroad, then also your financial account is in deficit, because it means that outside investors, they own more of your assets that you own of your own assets. It's a ton of things, but it's basically, I don't know, the whole foreign investments that American multinational do in the UK, like Uber, recently, I don't know, what's DoorDash, they both Deliveroo. So now Deliveroo is not a British company, it's an American company. So because DoorDash acquired Deliveroo, that is foreign investment that owns a British company. The company is not operates in Britain, but the money the cash flow belong to DoorDash in the United States. Same is Uber or the American banks or Boots. Boots, it's owned by foreign company, and Tesco probably it's owned by a foreign company. So there is all these dynamics which are derived from the financial services industry. There are private equity firms which buy bits and bobs of the UK economy. They buy private assets, and so you have more foreign ownership of assets or economic activity which is in the UK, and that basically goes into the whole system and say, okay, your financial account is in a surplus and in a deficit. It's when foreign investors own assets, they own more assets in your own country. So, fiscal balance, 1989, there is no fiscal balance here, but we can see that the early 1990s, there was a twin deficit. So it's not true that, no, it's not true. The Thatcher years, they were miracle years, okay? But of course, there were some sort of twin deficits. There was also the balance of payment as a percentage of current account, balance of payment as a percentage of GDP, current account balance as a percentage of GDP. Jesus Christ, there is a lot of things to say. There were deficits. So it means that the economy was importing more goods and services that they were exporting, and also the government was doing fiscal deficits, and in the end they managed to have some GDP growth. But so I mean, I don't see how the Thatcher years, they were so strict, or was John Majors, they were so strict with money supply. There are other periods here when the balance of payment was very restricted. Was the deficit was really marginal. So when we account for the overall figure, you see that primary income or secondary income, they were in a deficit of less than 1%, or here, especially the secondary income, minus 0.15%. So by growing GDP more than that, they were able to have the debt to GDP ratio shrinking. And so what they did, that they managed to have a very narrow balance of payment, because also the global economy was less globalized. But nevertheless, they also ran deficits in the balance of payment and also fiscal deficits. So it's just the perception or the economic condition of people that say, oh, there is a nightmare, there is a tightening of money supply or stuff like that. 1994, primary income was positive, and you can see here the balance of payment, which is the total primary income balance as a percentage of GDP, was positive in all in 3 quarters for 1994. So those are the numbers, and also the trade in goods and services as a balance of payment as a percentage of GDP was positive in the first 2 quarters. So it means that probably the UK, in 3 quarters, also in the 4th quarter. If we take 1994, we see that primary income was a surplus, and that one, which is the trade in goods and services, the balance of payment to the exterior, to the global economy, was positive. It means that the UK was exporting more than it was importing. So the cash flow is net positive, because if you are selling more than what you are buying, it means that you are taking more money in. It's very natural to understand. Okay, it's like a shop. If you have an inventory, you buy goods and you sell more goods that you have in shop, then you have a positive inflow. The balance of payment in the trade of goods and services was positive in 1994, and that was probably on the back of the fact that the services industry, financial services industry, gained a lot of market share. The same was in 1995. You can see that trend, 1994 and 1995, the trade in goods and services was really positive. And we can try and see, okay, but debt to GDP ratio continued to grow. So there are many dynamics, but what you see here false is that basically, did the government run a twin deficit? No, it's not true, because the government did a surplus in the balance of trade percentage as a proportion of GDP. So the economy was, especially the private sector, was doing good because the UK was selling more goods and services that it was importing. The same was in 1996 and 1997. The UK managed to export more than it was importing. But that doesn't mean that there was no twin deficit, but net debt to GDP ratio continued to grow. So because the private sector was doing okay, the government had more revenues, and so they did more fiscal deficit, in a sense. They knew that the economy was booming, so they took the chance to issue more debt, to do more fiscal spending, because the economy was doing okay. Yeah, and so the characteristic of the twin deficit, it's basically that you're running fiscal deficit and trade in goods and services deficit. So in the 1990s, there was no twin deficit, but then since 2002, the whole trajectory changed. You have persistent twin deficits, made exception for a few years or a few months. And so the debt to GDP ratio, it's on a trajectory that it's only growing. Here, you see here, it's true. Is it true that it was twin deficit? Yes. So since 2002, so since thereafter, the recession that is caused by the Wall Street.com bubble, you see here net debt to GDP ratio from 28% starts to grow, and nowadays it's 95%. So what is the mechanical working of having a growing debt to GDP ratio is when the economy needs persistent twin deficit. It's not saving anywhere. It's not saving in a fiscal position. It's not saving in the trades of goods and services and the capital inflows and outflows within the global economy. So you need financing for public debt. You need external financing from overseas investors into the private sector. So you need private equity to buy Tesco, buy Morrison's, to buy Boots and operate those stores. And so you need financing from anywhere. But I mean, this is not only of the UK. I mean, the United States, it has some deficit position towards the global economy in the trillions of dollars. So the United States needs financing of some 10, 20, 30 trillions of dollars from overseas investors. So that's how it works. And I would rather say that the change of trajectory that happens since 2002, it's due to two things. It's due to the financialization of the economy, and so to the credit derivatives and the debt bubble. Because what we have here, it's a debt bubble. Because with all the financialization of the economy and then all these things that if you take a lease to have a van or to have a cab or to do any business, then that lease is bundled up and become a credit derivatives and the credit cards. So it's also due to securitization. Okay, securitization, it's a financial engineering. I could have summed up to this: financial engineering. Financial engineering. So it's the level or the quantity of financial engineering that is being developed into the economy, so that we believe that we can be on an infinite growth trajectory of deficits, and it never matters. Well, I mean, it's not for now. It's 95%. The United States is 120, 130%. Italy is 138%. Japan is 220, 250. So it's the whole global economy which has changed shape. It has developed new methods of doing business, financialization, securitization, credit derivatives, the whole expansion, etc., etc., etc. It's a different time, different economic system, and so that's the way it is. I cannot change it. Well, anyway, it has been a real pleasure, and I hope that's been somewhat of useful, although it's boring. And I can suggest you that if you if you struggle to fall asleep at night, just tune in Oeconomica and listen to one of my videos, and you will fall asleep in the microsecond, in the nanosecond. Okay, and yes, thanks a lot, and see you soon in the next video. And basically remember that last but not least, the official borrowing figures are these ones. Where it is? Here. Or this. Is this scribble?